Hey everybody, we're back. We took last week off, but we've got another Ask Me Anything coming up. We've got a few questions that were already submitted, but we're also here to answer any of the questions you might have. For anybody who's new to this channel, hi, I'm Jesse. I'm the AI person here, automations expert. I play around with AI all day, get frustrated with it sometimes, but I make things work to help us all save time and to help you save time. We've got with me today, that was really oddly worded. Today, with me, as always, we have Tara and Amanda. Tara?
Hi, I'm Tara, brand strategist, creative director, and rebel with a cause. I've built my career helping underdogs punch above their weight, creating brands, telling their stories, getting themselves out there. I'm who you call when you have a client or you yourself want to make it unforgettable. I bring insatiable curiosity and a lot of heart to every project I work on. I listen more than I talk, believe it or not. I know you can't really tell sometimes from these live streams. And I've even made people cry with video, the good kind of cry. And I'm excited to answer more questions about all things branding and marketing today.
And we also have Amanda with.
Hello, I'm Amanda. I am the business side of the brand and business remix. I work in a lot of different areas of business, and if I'm not working as production manager for different television shows and documentaries, I am helping businesses figure out the back end systems, operations, all the organizational fun stuff that most people don't want anything to do with, but is a really important. It's really important to have a strong backbone of your company to make sure it's running well, and that's what I try to do, or that is what I do. I shouldn't say I try to do it. And also, I like to work with a little tiny aardvark on my desk at all times. I think everybody should have a little tiny aardvark.
I agree. Or a little tiny orange
Yes,
kitty.
yes, tiny some animal of some sort should always be present.
Agreed.
I have a large animal with me, a Roxy back behind my computer monitor.
Does she have ginormous blue eyes that look up at you and make you do anything?
You know the one.
I do.
Well, anybody that's watching, this is an AMA, so we hope that you ask us some questions. You can ask us live. We'll answer while you're here. If you can't stay, send them in the comments and we will still answer them anyway, and then we can tag you in the replay. But feel free, questions, commentary, what your favorite large animal or small animal is. We're open to anything.
Yep, we're here to help, to answer questions, and participation helps us so we don't feel like we're just talking into a great dark void. To start things off, we already have some questions that have been submitted to us, so we will switch over.
Oh, Jesse, you got quiet.
Jesse went dark again.
Bad audio.
So the first question is, and I think this one is coming to, I think, Amanda?
Amanda. Mm-hmm.
I think this is a question a lot of people have when they start out and they're starting to see some success. But how do I know it's time to hire help versus streamline what I already have?
I think that's one that people get stuck in quite a bit because you want to hire help, but then you have to pay for the help. And most people don't really want to pay for the help so you run into that block of, well, can we do it ourselves and save the money, or do we spend the money and then we have more time? We've heard me talk about the value of time and why that's so important. And I would think that when it's time to hire help is when you can't progress, when you're just maintaining, you're able to barely keep up with the work that you have, which is okay. You want to be busy enough that you're in that position. But there are also times when, even if maybe you're not fully booked, as we like to say, you might need to be able to advance. You might need that extra help so you can spend the time selling more, or whether that's, marketing, if it's networking, it's reaching out to other people, it's dedicating your time towards a thing that's going to make you more money, so that the money that you're paying some help is going to get you a bigger return on that. And another thing that I find that people run into is they want to hire cheap help. And number one, obviously, you have to pay people fair wages. Minimum wage exists. It doesn't mean that that's an appropriate salary to pay somebody. I think that we need to be really careful and making sure that we're hiring the best help and paying them what makes sense, what's fair for the value that they're offering. A lot of people don't do that. They think, oh, I'm going to get a VA or a virtual assistant. And there's nothing wrong with using temporary services and different kinds of things, but people get really stuck sometimes in the, oh, well, I can just pay a few dollars an hour. I can, put this overseas and have somebody else doing it for me. To each his own. I'm not somebody that likes to do that. I also think it's important that when you're considering who to hire, you could hire that entry-level person that's going to have the lower salary requirements. But if you hire the more experienced person, they're going to be able to get a lot more done in a lot less time. So it's not always going to cost you less to hire the cheaper person, because especially if you get into an hourly situation, or even if you put them on salary, that person's going to need a lot longer to get things done. Where if you bring in the person that's already been doing it and can be more efficient, even if you're paying them more, in theory, you could actually end up saving some money and you're getting better quality. I know the question wasn't really about what fair pay is, but I think it's also important to acknowledge that people who are paid well and treated well and valued are going to stay longer. They tend to be more loyal. They're going to give you that better service than if you just hire the cheap person. They're going to take the money while they can, but something better is going to come around and they're going to bail, and now you have to start all over. And that's what stops a lot of people from wanting to hire help in the first place. We talked about it a little bit before, but it's that, well, it's going to take me too long to teach somebody what they need to do. I don't have the time to do that. So it's faster if I just do it myself. But if you're in that habit of, I just need to do it myself because I'll do it the fastest, when are you ever going to be able to get out of that cycle to hire somebody to help you? So a lot of it comes down to just taking that leap and saying, okay, you know what? I need help. I can't do everything on my own. Even if I can, I shouldn't, because my time is valuable and I can be spending this in more important ways. I need to bring in somebody who I can trust, who is going to help me with this workload so we can grow, because otherwise you're just stuck where you are. And that, I don't think it's anybody's goal to stay stagnant, is my guess.
I don't think so. And talking about hiring overseas help, me and Tara worked with a company where we more or less oversaw the work of someone. We were doing a website, and the client wanted it to be done at a certain price point. They chose to use someone off of Upwork who was overseas. The long story short is, even though they were able to get the job done, there seemed to be a lot of kind of back and forth, and you've got the time zone differences. It seems to be a little more of a challenge trying to effectively communicate to people overseas, not just because of the language barrier, but just they might understand the English, but trying to really get them to understand what we're saying and what we're going for is a whole other issue. And we can have that issue with people who are native U.S. people who speak fluent English. Communication is always an issue, and not always an issue, but it can be an issue, because even though we're using the same words, a lot of times when I say it a certain way, someone else might hear it a different way or interpret it another way. So the more barriers we put between us and who we're working with, chances are we're going to have to put more time into supervising that work. And it doesn't matter if you're using AI, hiring somebody down the street, or someone across the ocean. the more you have to deal with getting everybody on the same page with the language, the more time you're spending on the project overall.
I don't know, Jesse. Even when I'm working with people who also speak fluent English, it seems like we're speaking completely different language sometimes. I think you get a group of people together and the way we all interpret and communicate the same email or the same meeting or the same conversation, it's always really interesting what comes out of that. But yeah, I mean, when there is a language barrier, it can require a lot more management time on your part as the person designing the website or on who you hired to help you design the website.
Like Mike says, listen to what I mean, not what I say. And I think we've all worked with bosses who function under that mentality.
And then you have people like Jesse and myself, and I'm guessing Mike also, where tone of voice becomes a thing. And we have to urge you to listen to the words, not the way in which we say it, because sometimes our tone comes out in a way that's not what's intended. But we try to, make sure that listen to the words that we're saying. That's what you need to focus on. But that's why communication is so difficult, because we all have very different ways of communicating. But that's an important factor when you're hiring help. You want to make sure that communication is really clear. It's whenever I'm taking on a new client or a new project, it's one of the first things that I discuss with them. How do you like to communicate? Are you a text person? Are you an email person? Are you some combination? What is the best way to get so I can help you, but also so I can manage that? Because if you don't have that conversation and one person's sending emails all the time and the other person is one of those people we've talked about that has 23,002 unread emails, they're going to want to hop on the phone and they didn't maybe read all of that stuff. But if you can streamline the way that you're communicating, makes a big difference. And sometimes people just don't have compatible communication styles. So, it's, I think, important to communicate about your communication to make sure it's going to work, but really making sure that you're finding the right hire versus just picking somebody who's cheap or like, even if somebody's recommended, you should still take time, not necessarily 13 interviews time, but you want to have a decent discussion. But I think it's important too that when you're hiring somebody, that you're asking them the questions, but also when somebody's hiring you, that you're asking those questions too, because you want to make sure that it's a fit for you, whether they're working for you or you're working for them.
Asking questions is so important. And not being afraid to ask questions when you're thinking of hiring somebody, whether that's somebody to design your website or a new employee. Really think about what you most need, what you most want to know, and have a solid scope of what you want this person to do. Really understand, okay, coming in, this is what I need. Because the thing is if you approach a vendor and you say, I think I need a website redesign, I'm not really sure, I think my website might suck. And, well, vendors differ in their expertise. Some are just going to take you at your word and say, okay, you want a website redesign? Sure, I can do that really cheaply for you. I'll charge you $800. Are you going to get a website that is going to be effective for you? Probably. My guess is probably not, because a more experienced vendor might come in and say, why do you think your website sucks? What led you to that belief? And you might say, well, I'm not getting anybody calling me or contacting me. I can't seem to get clients or customers. Now you're getting more to the root of the problem. And you can really see, is it the website or is it something else?
That specificity is a very, very, very important thing. That if you're just trying to figure out if you're going to hire somebody new, you need to know what you're hiring them to do. I find that sometimes people just say, I need help, so I'm going to bring somebody in. What's that person going to do for you? I don't know. We'll figure it out. And that's great. But it's really from both sides. Again, you need to have that clear scope. You need to know what you're paying them for. They need to know what their responsibilities are. And I just had a conversation with a potential, or it's a client currently, but somebody that maybe has some other stuff, and was asking, well, what would it cost for you to do this, this, and this? And one of the things was to pay attention to these emails. Luckily, he understood. He's like, well, neither of us can define what pay attention to means. So I have to go back and refine what these needs are. But that it's things like that. A lot of times people are very vague in these initial conversations. Like, oh, I'm just going to need your help. I may be making it sound like it's not a very heavy workload because they don't want you to feel overwhelmed before you even start, because they want you to say yes. And then when you get in there and then it's way more than they anticipated, then they're probably not going to stick around. And now you're going to have to start all over with somebody new. So again, it's if you're not sure if you're ready to hire somebody, it's taking the time to maybe even just list out. It doesn't have to be a big, long, fully detailed list, but those bullet points of what are the things that you anticipate letting this new person handle, and factoring in how long it's going to take you to train that person to do things the way that you like, and how much you're going to trust that person to figure out a different way that's going to suit them and might be better than what you've been doing. I think that's the other tricky thing is I don't think you're going to get very far if you're looking to hire somebody to be a second you. You have to be able to trust the people you hire, and everybody is going to have their own ways of working, and some oversight is expected. But once you get into that micromanagement territory, that's when you're going to send people running also. So, it's more about just setting those expectations, checking in when you need to, but giving them some room to really dive in. And remembering that when you bring somebody on in the very beginning, there are going to be a lot of questions. It's going to take time because you've been running your business for however long. That information just lives there. You forget that when it's some brand new person coming in, they don't have all that historical knowledge of what you've been through and what this client does and all the little nuances. They have to learn that. It takes time. So you want to be able to be accessible and not get frustrated. Like, chances are you're not going to be able to hire somebody that's going to come in and just instantly know exactly what to do the way you want it done, and they're going to do it. If you find that person, that's great, but it's not always how that works.
To piggyback on an earlier... Go ahead.
You can go ahead.
To piggyback on an earlier comment Amanda made, scope creep, we call it scope creep, is a real thing. And I would say it's one of the biggest source of frustration when I see conflict between somebody hiring a person to do a job or an employee. Whether it's, okay, here's the project, this is what we think we need, again, not having a clear scope. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, actually, can we add this? And can we add one more thing? And oh, that's not what I wanted. That is why it's so important to establish that in the beginning. But also, if you hire an employee, much to Amanda's point, they're going to be asking a lot of questions. You need to be prepared for that, but also make sure that you have a full understanding of what job you need done before you even think about hiring, before you even put the ad out there, so to speak. What is it you need them to do? Because I've seen so many employees come in and think they were doing one job, and then it turned out they were doing something else entirely, and they were not happy about it.
And I think you're going to hear us talk quite a bit about the importance of being organized, not going into things without a plan or knowing what you need and want. Same thing goes to hiring somebody, like we've mentioned. You want to know what you're hiring for, what you expect the person to be doing, and have a clear picture of that. Because if you don't, you're going to end up probably hiring the wrong person, or a person that's not a good fit for what you need. And we all know there's a huge cost to hiring the wrong person, the wrong freelancer, the wrong contractor. I don't know why we have so many examples with websites, but Tara was working for a company where she was in charge of overseeing the website design. She researched a bunch of companies, presented two to the boss, the boss said, okay, we want to go with this group. When Tara and the boss were in the first meeting, it did not go well. Tara told the boss, we should cut ties and go with the other company because this is not going to go well. The boss didn't listen to Tara. No, we'll just stick with them. And it turned out to be just a nightmare project. They never actually ended up completing the project with that vendor because the vendor was just misrepresented themselves. Yeah, we can do it this way, the way you want it. And then, well, no, actually, we're going to use this software instead. But that's not what we agreed to. So the project ended up costing a lot more because a new developer had to be brought in and was more or less starting from scratch. I think Tara had done all of the mock-ups, so it was just a matter of putting that into place. But it still took a lot longer. It came in over budget, past deadline, and that's why it's so important, if you are in a position to hire somebody, that you hire the right people and know what you're looking for. And if you're not sure how to hire the right person, that's why consultants can really be helpful, because they can help you. They can sit in on the meetings with the people you're interviewing, or a lot of times they can recommend people they already know and have vetted to be able to do the job.
And that's another point that I've always thought interesting, how it's always the boss who's barely involved who does the hiring. I think that if you have a team, you should let your team be involved to some degree because personalities matter. There's every group, whether it's 2 people or 10 or bigger, there's usually a sort of culture involved, whatever that is. People have a certain style. And if you bring in the one person, it's like if you've watched the show Hacks, when they're in the writer's room and they're all making jokes and they're all great, but there's that one person that just shuts it down every time with it just doesn't fit in. It's not just about the CEO or the C whatever, or, whoever's in charge. The people who are going to be working directly with this person, and it's not that they just need to get along, but you really should make sure that the flow is still going to be there, that there's, if you've got a bunch of creative, quirky people, it's okay to bring in one serious type person, but if it's, the pouty, I'm just going to be grumpy and not have any fun kind of person, that's usually me, then it's not going to be, I'm not really that grumpy at all, but I do like to get my work done and then have fun when there's time. But that can play a big part, especially if you're hiring somebody that's going to work really closely with one specific person. If those personalities are going to clash, or the situation that I was brought into once, I was recruited to be at my last director of operations job, and the person who was kind of in charge of the accounting department thought she was going to get my job. So the owner had told me prior to even starting that she already hated me. Never met me, but I knew that I was walking into a situation where somebody was already upset because I took her job. And she was not pleasant the whole time we worked together, but I was as nice as can be, and I made sure that she had nothing that she could do. And she stopped trying to get under my skin very quickly and moved on to someone else because I was just nice to her. And what are you going to do when somebody's nice to you? Complain? I can't believe how nice she is to me all the time. But that was an odd situation, but you just kind of want to know what you're getting into. If you're bringing somebody in that's going to be working with some, because sometimes somebody's in the process of kind of pushing somebody else out and they're bringing in support. You just have to be really careful. And again, that's all communication of what is this person going to do? What is your goal for them? What is their goal for themselves? Are those things going to be in alignment? But ultimately the goal is to make it so you have more free time. And again, free time could mean just free time during the work week to focus on growing the business, or it could be getting time for your personal life back, so you're not working 80 hours a week trying to run your business. There are a lot of different things that could be used, but that's really the whole point usually in hiring somebody is you're hiring somebody either that has a skill set that you don't have at all that you need, and that's allowing you to expand and maybe offer different things, or you're looking to off or put off some of the offload's the word I'm looking for, offload some of your responsibilities to let someone else take over, so then you can focus on different things. And if you're in any of those positions where you just don't have enough time and you're not moving forward and you want to, now's probably the right time to hire somebody new.
Awesome. Shall we move to the next question? I know we sometimes run out of time.
I have one last thing to tie in.
Okay.
It's really short. And the other reason it helps to be clear on what you're looking for is it's going to make things a whole lot easier for the person you hire. It's going to be easier for them to know what's expected. And with that, we will move on to the next. I've got ideas, but they never seem to get out the door. What's missing? Tara? Where are the ideas? Where do they go?
Actually, I think that one was for Amanda, but I can try chiming in here. You've got ideas, but they never get to, I see this happen a lot when your goals aren't clear to begin with. So if you're not really clear on where you want to be as a business next year, where you ultimately want to be, let's say in 10 years, you're super successful, everything's gone the way you want it to go. Have you mapped that out? What does that look like? If you don't have that clear direction, yeah, your ideas are going to fall apart because you're just going to brainstorm about, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? Okay, but why are we doing this? It sounds cool, but why are we doing it? You have to know why you're doing the ideas, for the ideas to have feet, so to speak, and start walking. And one of the best ways you can do that, like I said, is working with someone or just working with your team to clarify what your goals are and what success looks like to you. What are the metrics? What are you measuring? Not to get all technical and markety on you, but it's important. And I'm sure Amanda will give you more specifics there. But yeah, what's missing is direction and clear goals.
And to me, the thing that I see the most often, what's missing is just getting started. It's very easy to get so stuck in your head and you want everything to be perfect and you're going down the Google rabbit hole, and now it's probably an AI rabbit hole where you're just asking all the questions and what should I do and what if I don't do this, and I need to have everything perfectly lined up. And you get so far into that you're not actually doing anything. You are just thinking about doing it. And it's a lot of times I think we do that because it's that fear of pulling the trigger. It's that you don't want to, I'm sure that that's not a good analogy these days, but that's the first one that came to my head. I'll find a better way to word that. But you want to launch, you want to just go, but it's that fear of, well, once I start doing it, now I'm doing it and now I'm accountable. And now what if I fail? And what if you fail? But what if you don't? It's at some point you have to just get started. And I'm somebody who teaches business workshops that are usually telling people things like this. You want to have those specific goals. You need to know what you need to have done, but you also are going to figure things out as you go a little bit. And there's times when that makes sense. But if you get so hung up on, sometimes people get hung up on, what am I going to call my business? And so they've got all these ideas and they just don't have a name. And then that takes months, or it's the website, or it's well, I don't have any clients yet. And what am I supposed to do? And it's finding a lot of things to keep you busy without actually doing without actually getting started, without getting going. Because especially if you're already in business, it's a little bit different. But if you're just getting started, and you just have to start. And even if that means, well, okay, do I want to operate? Just say you're one person. Well, don't I have to have an LLC? Maybe that's the path that you want to go down, but you can start right now as a sole proprietor and you can change your mind. You can still start working, get going. You can progress as you go. But I'm somebody that likes preparation, but I find that overly preparing sometimes gets people stuck. And it's the same with an idea. You want to have it fully fleshed out. Granted, you don't want to start throwing money into an idea if you don't know where it's going. You want to have some kind of structure. We talked, like Jesse mentioned, organization is a big topic. Nobody likes organization, but you have to be organized if you're running a project or a business. Otherwise, it's probably not going to be as successful as you want it to be. But I would just always say that, if you're somewhat afraid of doing it, if you don't want to put yourself out there, like figure out why is it that you haven't started yet? And is it because you don't have everything lined up? Is it because you're scared to try? And if it's fear, maybe you can push through that a little bit. But all of those things, it really comes down to, again, that's that organization. What are all the things that need to be done? Make sure that they're written down somewhere. It could, whatever style is yours, whether you're an old-fashioned pen and paper kind of person or digital, however that works, just make sure all of that stuff gets out of your head and into somewhere where you can see it, and start giving yourself a checklist of, I need to get this thing done. Give yourself deadlines. Even if they're not real deadlines, people tend to work much better when they have, it's like the specific goal. If you know, okay, I have to have this piece of this done by the end of the month, that gives you something to work towards. Where if it's just, I know I need to get this done before I move forward with the next step, everything else is going to come and interfere and get in the way. So when you work for yourself, especially, you sometimes have to trick yourself by giving yourself deadlines, by giving yourself schedules and hours and those things that maybe people don't like, but the structure is there for a reason.
And I think there's a number of people who feel everything has to be perfect before they can get started. Everything has to be perfect before I put this out, release it to the public so people can see it. And that makes it much harder for us to do anything, because we've got this fear that if it's not perfect, it's going to reflect poorly on us. Or if it's not perfect, it's not going to perform well. But neither will nothing. If you don't put anything out there, it's not going to perform. It's not going to reflect on you at all. And I was working on a podcast with the podcast agency we were working with. They brought me on in, what was it, June of last year? June or July. They brought me on to do editing. They were going to get started releasing episodes in September. September rolled around. Still nothing. Finally, in I think November, they started putting together like deadlines, but nothing was getting done. It's June the year after, and they still haven't put anything out. And since I'm not working with them anymore, I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes, but a year to get a show started that they already have all of the plans for, that's why sometimes things don't get out the door. That's why perfectionism, there's that saying, the perfect is the enemy of done.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Because we share a brain. But that's exactly it. The more we obsess on all of these tiny little details that most people don't care about, it makes it harder for us to get it out there.
To build on Jesse's point, I'm just going to be straightforward with everyone. You are leaving money on the table. Let me repeat that. When you are striving for perfection and you're afraid to try out ideas, you are leaving money on the table. In fact, you might actually be losing money, like Jesse was talking about, because you might be investing in something, and then if you don't put it out, that's wasted money. How much time did you put into that? It's not just what you paid for it, but what about the hours you devoted to that? So I think I end up having this conversation with a lot of founders because new ideas are scary. Doing things differently is scary. Putting yourself out there on social media is scary. Thinking about, well, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I offend somebody? What if I post and nobody pays attention and then I'm embarrassed because I don't get any engagement and people think I'm not doing well? I've heard it all and I completely understand it. We all have those fears. But the thing is if you don't try, if you don't test out ideas, then you're never going to know. And we've all been there. We've all put out content that nobody engages with. We've all had to start, or many of us anyway, had to start at the bottom, so to speak, and build that credibility from the ground up. And that means a lot of time spent doing content that people don't really see or pay attention to until you start building more. And then slowly more people start engaging with it. Jesse's a really good example of that. If you told me that he would have his own YouTube channel, like even 3 years ago, and be rocking it, I'd be like, not that he's not talented, but he's just never been someone who wants to be on camera and talking to people and front and center. And so I would have thought, no way. But he decided to do it because he's an audio genius and he has a lot to share and a lot of expertise around audio and different mics and equipment and how to make your audio sound better. And he just decided, screw it, I'm going to start this channel. I don't care that I'm not comfortable in front of the camera. I'm just going to wing it and I'm going to see what happens. And over the course of a year, he's built this big subscriber base. People really look at him as an expert and they go to him and they come to him for advice. And if he was afraid, if he said, well, I'm not somebody who's good, being in front of the camera, or I don't like the way I talk, or I'm afraid that, people might judge me, then he never would have done that.
And the other part of it was, this is a part of how we need to market our business, because we're not the best at going out and networking in person. So I had to kind of push myself out into this world to start learning about it so we can understand how to utilize it to be able to better market our business and the different things we're working on. I'm still not comfortable on camera, but if I never did this, I never pushed myself to do it, I'd still be sitting there going, well, how do I market my business? How do we use YouTube? Sometimes you just have to push yourself out there, put those ideas out there, start learning. And if we're doing things the right way, every day we're going to get a little bit better at what we do. The more we get used to it, the more we get practice, the better we get at whatever it is we're doing.
Well, the thing is that we expect ourselves to be perfect. The audience doesn't expect you to be perfect. In these days, people respect that everybody's looking for that vulnerability, for that authenticity, for all those buzzwords, but they're buzzwords for a reason. And it's because people want to connect with humans, and humans aren't perfect. So I know if I see somebody who's a little bit maybe socially awkward on camera, hi, that's me, I will relate to that because socially awkward on camera and okay with it. And people sometimes, and I'll say that, and people are like, oh, don't be self-deprecating. You're not socially awkward. I'm not criticizing myself. I love my awkwardness. It's part of who I am because I know that I'm going to connect with those other people who also feel awkward. So it's fine. But I think we all put ourselves at such high standards that we think that the rest of the world is going to do the same, even if it's, we're going to do something that 3 people see, maybe only 1 person sees it. Very few people are actually judging us the way we're judging ourselves. So that's part of just getting out there and not, I know it's much easier to say, don't care about what other people think about you, but than that it is to put that in practice. But I think it's really important that if you feel strongly about your idea, about your business, about the message you're trying to get out in the world, you will find your people somehow. Then the people who maybe don't resonate or who will criticize you because it's not perfect, those aren't your people. You don't want to work with them anyway, because somebody who's expecting perfection is always going to be let down, because that's not how this life works.
Exactly. And we've got another comment from Mike. I have a face for radio and a voice for silent movies.
One of these days, we're getting you as a guest on this live
Yes, we
stream.
are.
You will be on camera with us.
You will.
Somehow it's going to happen.
And one other kind of anecdote I have that's kind of on the other side is we worked with one company who the person had really solid ideas of what he wanted, but he didn't understand his role within the hierarchy of the production and the company. So he hired us to do a lot of work. This was for a podcast. We did a bunch of custom video work. We redid their intro, writing an original song, getting a new voiceover actor to do the voiceover, and it went nowhere. This company paid us easily thousands of dollars to produce stuff that was never put out because either he decided he changed his mind in the middle of the project or he couldn't get approvals from the higher-ups to use it. So that's another thing to think about is it's good to have ideas, but you need to have a clear picture of what you want, how it's going to be used, and if there are other people that need to sign off on it too. Because there's nothing worse than putting money into creating things that can't get out the door either.
Yeah, I know strategy is a scary word, but don't run away from it. I know strategy makes you think of that consultant that's going to cost you $50,000 to sit there and go, you know what? I think you should do A, B, and C, and here's a 90-page report on what I think you should do with a lot of jargon in it. Have fun. Good luck. No. Good strategy and good strategists are going to help you solve this problem of, I've got ideas, but they never seem to go anywhere. They're going to work with you on figuring out an action plan on how to make it so you're not throwing money out the window, so you're not leaving money on the table. That's something that Amanda does. She figures out, okay, what do people do really well? And what part should each person play in the project to make it as efficient and as effective as possible?
And that all ties in. It's kind of to wrap up the last question plus this question, because you're talking about the timing and whatnot. And it's sometimes you just have to get started, but you're thinking about when to hire somebody also. If you don't have enough time to dedicate to your idea, it's probably not going to go anywhere because it's not real yet. It's just an idea phase and it just kind of gets put on the shelf and I'll get to it when I have time and I'll get to it. And you never get to it because there is always stuff coming around. And one of the companies that I've worked with for the last year and a half in completely revamping their, what we call the back end systems and how everything runs, I first started talking to them in 2019. It took them 5 years to finally decide we're ready to do this. They knew years ago that this needed to be done, but they were scared of it. They didn't want to put the money into it. They didn't want to put the time. They didn't want to train new people. They didn't want to change the existing processes because then everybody there would have to learn a new way of doing things and that would just slow them down. So there were all these excuses that why they couldn't move forward. 5 years goes past and they finally just figured out, like, we've been running this way for decades. It's not working. I mean, we're getting by and we're getting business and we're paying the people we need to pay, but we're not really streamlined. We're not getting to where we need to go. We need to really start from the beginning in some kind of sense. And 5 years of waiting is 5 years that poor systems made everything more and more jumbled, which meant that that's why, we're a year and a half in and still fixing things in one department because, the longer that you keep putting these Band-Aids on things or not hiring the people to help you move forward, things just get, even if they're working right now, we always use that, you're just throwing a Band-Aid on it to get by. At some point, those Band-Aids are going to fall apart. And if there's not the structure to hold everything together, then you're going to have a much bigger disaster on your hands. So sometimes not wanting to take the time to move forward is going to cost you a lot more the longer that you put it off. So you want to kind of be real with yourself and with your team. Are we doing things well or are we doing things just to get by? And if you're just getting by and you know that things aren't right, or somebody on your team keeps telling you, hey, this isn't working, or you're continually making mistakes, and that's going to affect your relationship with clients and vendors and all of those things. If those mistakes are happening and things aren't working, it's probably time to hire that help that you wanted to know about. And the same thing with these ideas that you have that you want to move forward with. You have to decide on a time and just say, you know what, we're going to make the time now, and we're going to do it now. Now is a good time to do it.
Now is always the best time to do it. Do we have any last wrap-ups before we move on?
I think we're good.
Okay. How much should I invest in branding if I'm not seeing leads yet?
This is a question I hear a lot. And branding is one of those things that people think of as frivolous. They think, things like logos and websites and messaging, they cost an arm and a leg. And do they really do anything? Because the thing about branding is it's difficult to track your branding efforts with how many leads you're getting in or how many sales you're getting. It's difficult to figure out, okay, how much ROI am I truly getting with this? How much is it helping our business? And that's the trickiest part about branding, because it is easy to say, like, am I suddenly going to get a bunch of customers because I changed my logo? Are you? Probably not, if that's the only thing you did. If you just changed your logo because you wanted it to look prettier, because you wanted to look more polished, I think that's great. But you did that for you. It's not necessarily going to bring a bunch of people to your business. That said, a logo is an example of something that is still a big part or symbol of your business. Meaning, when you go to events, that's what people see representing you. Whether it's on your banner behind you, or they go to the website and they see you're a speaker and they see your logo listed, they start to associate that with you. So if your logo is less than stellar, or it looks like your first grader did it, it's going to give people a certain impression right off the bat. So I'm not saying that logos aren't important, because they are. But branding is so much more than the visual. Branding is so much more than what your messaging or your voice is. Branding is really the heart and soul of who you are with your company. They often say marketing is how customers hear about you, and branding is why they stick around and stay with you. And I think people oftentimes don't prioritize retention enough. They're always chasing the shiny new. We want new clients, more customers, new people in the door. How do we get more new people? Instead of really focusing on building those strong relationships with the customers and clients you already have, because those are the people that have already chosen you for one reason or another. They had options and they decided to go with your product or your services or your consultants. If you're a consultant, they connected with you. So it's really important, I'd say more important, to build your relationships with the customer or client base you already have when it comes to your brand, versus always trying to get new leads in the door. And I say that because those people that you have a good relationship with, that have a good experience with you, then talk to other people and say, you know what, I know this product I use or the service, these people treat me really well. Their customer experience is wonderful. Your brand, your customer experience is part of your brand. When people call you, when people fill out your form, the questions, do you have 80 questions for them to fill out where they're like, oh my God, I don't have time for this? Or is it simple, frictionless? That is all part of your branding. So when you're talking about investing in branding because you're not seeing leads yet, I would say invest as much as you can, as much as you're comfortable with, because if you do it the right way and you do it in a way that it's going to attract, like Amanda was talking about, your people who are going to connect with you, then if you hire someone who knows what they're doing, or you know what you're doing, you're going to get that investment back and more, because you are going to be able to more easily target the people who are most likely to fall in love with what you're providing. And so you want to look at every touch point, not just the things you think of when you think of branding, but your entire customer experience, from the second people become aware of you to their relationship with you when they've been working with you for 5 years. What does that entire customer journey look like? And so when you're investing in branding, that's what you're investing in, is building that process and and what all of those touch points say and the experience people have with you. And that experience is really, really, really important. And so the reason you might not be getting the leads that you want, it could be because maybe your website isn't that great. People go to it and they can't find what they need, so they leave. Well, that's a bad brand experience. Maybe you're not getting leads because you're not putting yourself out there in the right places or in the right ways, because again, part of developing that brand is figuring out who your audience is and knowing all about them, almost like they're characters in a book. What do they do during the day? What do they love? What are their passions? What are their fears? What are, we like to say, pain points in the marketing world, but essentially, what are they struggling with and how are you helping make their day better? Why do they need what you're offering? And having a really firm understanding on that, not just on a functional level. We're not just talking about speed or price. We're talking about the emotional connection to it. I need this ice cream because it makes me feel better after a really bad day and it tastes really good. That's an emotional connection. So if you know that about your customers, you're going to be able to put out content that's going to stand out so much more, because as we all know, we are bombarded by content. When we go to social media, our feeds are just filled with information and it all starts to sound the same and we just stop paying attention. But when we think about when we're on LinkedIn or Facebook or TikTok, why do we stop? Why do we stop and read certain posts? What is it about those posts that make us stop? For me, if I see an orange and white kitten, I'm jello. So if orange and white kittens are part of your marketing plan, okay, you got me. And maybe somebody out there understands that about me or people like me, and so they're going to attract orange and white kitten loving people like me. But really, that encompasses what branding is as a whole and how it's intertwined with marketing. And the marketing piece of that is, okay, now that I have a really solid brand, we understand our audience, we know our customer journey, we've built our customer experience up. How do we get the word out there? What are the best channels to use? What are the best strategies? How much should we invest in that? And again, somebody who has that background can help you work through all of that. So you can not just get leads, but the right leads, because you don't want to get a bunch of people to your website who don't really want to be there because that's what we call just kind of not good leads, because they're not really for you.
Do you find that a lot of people struggle with that part of it because they don't want to get that specific about their audience, where they say, but I want to work with everyone. I want to appeal to everyone, because I think that's a pretty natural thing, is you don't want to exclude certain groups of people. You want to be able to work with anyone. But when you want to work with anyone, who are you really appealing to? Is that still a common issue in the marketing world?
Oh, yes. Yes. It's in fact, it's become a cliche of what we say it over and over again. If you try to appeal to everyone, you appeal to no one. But honestly, there's a lot of truth to it, because when you think about it, by trying to market everyone, you have to go with pretty broad, generic messaging. And when you're trying to, let's say, get the right people to see your ad or on LinkedIn, how do you know who to target? If you target everyone, that's not going to work out well for you when you're working with paid ads. You need to really understand who it is you want to speak to, and everything should be on point and make it feel like this This was made directly for them. And you can't do that if you're trying to market to everyone. You can't. So it's really not going to sit with people in general. It's not going to connect to them on that deeper emotional level that these days you need to be able to do, because people, again, are being bombarded by messages all day long.
And that's why you need a branding and marketing strategist or specialist, because there are not those people like me. And that I know, especially in the beginning, that was always my issue, was I don't know who my audience is. I don't know how to really dig into who this specific character is. I am not equipped to do that on my own. I need you to tell me how to do that. And I think that's where a lot of us, I'm going to put myself in that category, we get stuck. It's because it's intimidating to hire somebody else, and you always think, well, they're not going to get me. And I think because there are a lot of people out there that don't take the time, and that's why I only work with you on that stuff now, because you're the only one who's taken the time to really, I feel, get to know who I am and not try to change me into being somebody who's more marketable, but taking who I am and saying, we can work with this. We know that, I've built a successful business working with people solely by reputation. So I'm good at what I do. I know there are people who need me, but it's really, I need someone like you that says, well, this is how we're going to find more of those people who need you and can pay you to do the things that you do, versus all of us who think, oh, we're going to do it ourselves. Yeah, and at least for me, not marketing, which has been my strategy, has not worked all that well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, marketing is overwhelming for everyone, including those of us who are, brand strategists and marketing strategists, because it's constantly changing. What apps you should be on, what platforms you should be on is evolving, and then now you have AI added into the mix that is moving at a lightning pace, and it's a lot for people to keep up with. But at the end of the day, exactly what Amanda said, a good brand or marketing strategist is going to help you figure out who that your audience is, because you can't always articulate it. So what we do is we ask you questions. We keep prodding. We are generally really curious people. So we try and find the best questions to ask so we can get the most out of our sessions together as possible and help you get as much direction as possible. And then once we have that, then it's our job as your friendly marketing or brand strategist to then do research, what we call marketing research, and figure out, okay, now that I know exactly who my client wants to work with and what their end goal is. Now I'm going to do some research and find those exact right people that they're looking for. And that's what we do. We do a mix of what we call quantitative and qualitative. But qualitative, I think, is really important because it involves you actually talking to either the person's customers, the business's customers, or their potential customers. And it depends on how much you want to invest. Some businesses, large businesses, are going to invest in focus groups, would be an example of that, where they actually bring people in and they ask them questions and they get a really good idea on how to market to them because they're actually able to talk to them. What I often do, especially for some of my smaller clients, is just ask them for a list of customers that have been loyal to them in the past, that they have a good relationship with, or people they want to work with, maybe within their network that would be a good target customer. And then I get on and I interview them and I just ask them a few questions. And that gives my clients oftentimes a lot of really helpful information that then we can use to create content or to do proposals or decks or things like that. It always comes back to not just fully understanding your customer and what they need and who they are, but actually always understanding who you are first. What are your goals? Establish that first, because if you don't have a clear picture of that, it's going to be really hard for you to define or connect with who your ideal customers are. And it looks like we have some comments from Mike here.
I'll get to Mike in just a minute, because that is going to kind of shift the conversation. One of the things that I know we've dealt with, and for some reason we see it a lot in marketing, branding related areas, is that people want to self-diagnose. We don't go to the doctor and tell them what we have. We tell them the symptoms. The doctor asks us questions. But for some reason, a lot of people self-diagnose. I'm not getting enough leads, so it must be my branding. Maybe I need a new logo, or I need a new website. But they're self-diagnosing, and maybe they pay to have a new website done and realize they're still not getting leads because they figured the problem was the website. They didn't actually ask the questions of, why am I not actually seeing leads? And that's why it's so important that we don't self-diagnose. At least figure out what the problems are and try to find solutions, not look at it, I'm not getting leads. What are some of the reasons I might not be getting leads? It might be the website. Okay, I'm going to go get a new website done. Well, that didn't work. Maybe it's my logo. No, that didn't change anything. So you're just throwing money at guesses. Someone like Tara can help you really understand why it is you probably aren't seeing leads. And it's usually a number of things that all play in together. It's usually not one specific thing that is causing that symptom. And now we'll move on to Mike's questions. With my product, I make custom metal signs, so I can't just target orange and white cat owners. Is it possible to create a brand for my business? And then he followed that up with, I make wedding and anniversary, funeral, military, ranch signs. I have a broad market. Should I limit my focus?
Interestingly enough, that's one of the other questions we'd planned on answering today because this comes up a lot about having what we call multi-passionate, but a lot of different focuses at once and how you manage that. In fact, when we did the brand with Amanda live, we sorted through some of that issue of, she serves very different clients and has very different focuses. So how do we map out her brand in a way that's going to make sense and help her find success? In terms of orange and white cat owners, is it still possible to create a brand for my business? I think that's okay. I think maybe if you want to target gray and white cat owners, you could do that because that Amanda is a gray and white cat lover. So if you want to do like a metal sign with a gray and white cat on it, I'm sure you would have a loyal customer for life.
I'd probably buy that from you. Yeah, that's true.
But Mike, without delving into your brand too much or asking too many questions, just right off the bat, when you say you're making wedding and anniversary, funeral, military, and ranch signs, that's a broad amount of products. But is it a broad market? How do you know that it's a broad market? Because people might be coming to you because they like your unique work. Do you have a unique spin on all of these different signs that you do that screams, Mike McCune did this? Because if that is the case, you might have customers that want to come to you for wedding and anniversary signs or military signs because maybe they need all three. Do you ever Go ahead.
And sometimes, there's two ways to limit one's focus. You've got the customer side or the client side, and then you have your business side. And kind of tying in with what Tara's saying, if you're known for creating custom metal signs, maybe that is your focus. But maybe you decide, you know what? I really like making wedding and anniversary signs, so I'm going to focus on that. You can build your brand around that to the point where you're the premier wedding and anniversary custom sign maker. And now you can charge more of a premium because that is all you do. You're the expert in that field. And then he followed up with, I guess that's why I'm working with the three of you next month. So I guess not really a follow-up, but yeah. But that's what I kind of look at it as. There's two ways to really niche down. Sometimes it's based on who you want to work with. Sometimes it's more on the business you want to do yourself. I think my customers like that I make what they want instead of them finding something close to what they like mass-produced from China. So more of that custom element.
So one of the things I'd ask you, Mike, is out of wedding, anniversary, funeral, military, ranch signs, is there a particular sign that you like making more than any other type of sign? Or do you love making them all? So that would be question number one when we think about, does it make sense to niche down? Do we need to niche down? Or is just a Mike McCune sign in these categories enough, especially when you make, like you just said, when you give them what they want? They feel that personalized service. Again, that is part of your brand, is that they come to you because they know that you're going to listen to them and give them what they want versus just hand them something that didn't have a lot of thought put into it. It sounds like you actually talk to them and get to know them a little bit. And that right there is a reason to go to Mike McCune versus go to Walmart and buy a sign.
Well, yeah, it's like art in general. I know for me, I would much rather have a custom piece that was something that I specified or that an artist thought when he saw me versus going to Bed Bath and Beyond and getting the same generic, whatever wall hanging. I've had plenty of those generic wall hangings in my life. I probably have some of them now, and that's fine. But that anything that's custom, I think, is already going to find, especially when you're talking about big life events like those, and people are planning weddings or big anniversaries. I didn't know that they made signs for funerals, but fortunately I haven't been to a lot of funerals to know that. But all of these, like a ranch, we have a lot of farmland where we are, and I noticed some of those signs out here, and you take a lot of pride in those things. You want something unique, so that to me is a big selling point, that you're going to make custom whatever they want. So even if those are two different events, obviously a wedding and a funeral are not the same event, but the selling point is that it's a custom sign for what I need or for what your customer needs.
Do we have anything else to add to that?
I think we just decided that Mike is going to make a cat. And Mike doesn't strike me as a cat maker, but I think that's what's going to happen.
I think so. I think he's going to make Amanda a gray and white cat. Gray and white cat sign that says Collins on it. Actually, he should take inspiration from the spider monkey picture that you posted.
Well, yeah. I actually could see that sign. That's not a bad idea. We may need to talk about that.
I think that would be a cool sign.
Yeah,
you could stick it right in your lawn.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, my delayed reaction to that was reading Mike's next comment. It just made me laugh, and that's what I was laughing at. He said, "I'll leave the wedding and funeral not being the same thing joke alone." Well, as somebody who's been married as long as you have, I think you're allowed to make that joke. I don't know if Stephanie will appreciate it, but she probably makes the same joke sometimes too.
Yeah, I think we all do. Those of us who are nuts enough to get married anyway. I'm kidding, Jesse.
I know. Okay, so moving on. This one is for me. When does over-automating start to cost you trust, conversions, and connection. And I mean, that's really the thing. You don't want to automate everything. The technology just isn't there to automate everything. If we think about how many times have we dealt with a chatbot on a website or called into some 800 number and we deal with their AI voice prompt nightmare system. That doesn't leave a good taste in our mouth. More often than not, we end up just being frustrated by the process. So we want to be careful about what we automate, and we want to make sure we're still keeping that human connection. Because when you're working with customers, at least with the types of people we tend to be working with, that connection with the customer, that connection with the client is one of the most important relationships we can build. And if we try to automate that, our customers and clients are going to look at us differently. Instead of being a group of people who offer services and help them solve problems, it becomes more of a transactional relationship, like you might have with Best Buy or your cable company or cell phone, whoever. That's not where we want to be when we're small businesses, medium-sized businesses who want to build that human element. And it's going to become more and more important over the next few years to really focus on where can we keep that human element, that human interaction in the loop, and where is it better to automate things and use AI. Right now, behind the scenes is probably the best place to be using automations. Maybe next week, next month, maybe 3 years from now, the technology will get there where it's going to be easier to have a chatbot that actually works, that can answer people's questions, so that nobody's wasting a whole lot of time going on, calling the 800 number, waiting on hold for the next available operator, listening to the really bad on-hold music that for some reason they seem to have only licensed 2 songs for, so you hear each song 8 times before you get helped. I mean, it's a delicate balance, but we need to just look at that and think about how do we feel if we experienced this from the other side of the table. What have you two experienced when it comes to obvious AI usage that you've run across out in the wild?
Out in the wild. I don't. I mean, this isn't really relevant in the sense because this is a giant company, but an example of why it's important to keep that human element is, I sent a crew out for the last couple of weeks. They've been traveling all over the country, filming some stuff. I need to get copies of their hotel folios. This one particular giant hotel chain has made it nearly impossible because you have the options of calling a number that nobody answers, that you can wait on hold, and then listen to the automated voice tell you an email address that you can't really understand, to which you email that address, and eventually it comes back saying they're too busy and they did not receive it. Or you can leave a voicemail and hope they call you back, or you use their chatbot, in which it just takes forever and ever and ever, when it should be a very simple call. Every other not giant hotel chain, or even some of the other giant hotel chains, you call, you give them the info, they email it, you're done in 5 minutes. And that, is with multiple people. But in general, we all know what it's like to be frustrated with customer service. We expect that for some reason from these bigger companies. But to me, if I do everything that I can to not work with big companies. I would much rather work with individuals. I like the custom service, same as Mike's sign. I like the personal, and that's what I offer as well. So I think you have to be very careful that if clients are used to working with you in a certain way, and then your processes change. So I guess this is a little bit relevant because it's a conversation I was having with somebody just recently is, they're starting to put these other processes into place, but what's happening is now their customers and some of their vendors are feeling like they're not being heard, they're not being responded to quickly enough, they're not getting the same level of service, and they're feeling like, well, what is going on? Like, we've been doing business with you for a long time, but now it just seems like you don't care. And because the processes aren't properly keeping that customer service focus, where I think in any line, whether you're providing a service or product or anything, your customer has to be the most important thing. And if they're trying to give you money, and this is what I never understand about this, it's, you're trying to give people money. Like, I am trying to pay you. Let me let me give you money, and then you don't hear from them, or you have to go with another vendor because the people that you used to rely on just don't even bother responding. It makes it difficult. So I think when people think, okay, I'm busy, I'm going to be able to automate a lot of this, I can use bots, I can do all of these things. It's great that you can do that, but you want to make sure that you're not losing the customer experience in the process. I think that would be my biggest recent thing that I've noticed.
If you've noticed a pattern here, everything keeps coming back to that branding and customer experience, and how you choose to use AI is a big part of that. Because again, like we've said in previous episodes, using AI ethically and responsibly is a big topic right now. And what does that look like? I personally don't think letting AI just run everything for you and walking away is a great idea, not ethically, not the best idea for your business. AI needs a babysitter. It needs someone to manage and oversee and look at what's going on and diagnose problems and look at the data and see what's happening. So if you're noticing, since you implemented an AI system, that your conversions are going down, you need to figure out why that's happening. And it could very well be because you're over automating and you no longer have that personal touch that matters so much to people. And quite frankly, with AI just exploding and being everywhere now, more and more people are starting to notice that all the content sounds the same. Everybody's starting to talk the same and say the same things. And you go on a website and you get the chatbot and you feel like you don't even get to connect with real humans anymore, to the point where it really stands out when you do and you get that personalized service. So in some ways that actually offers opportunities for businesses that want to stay true to that, keep on with that human connection, keep on making sure that people are getting the personalized service that they deserve. And there's a way to do that and still use AI to help you be more efficient on the back end. But I think utilizing AI to do everything, like all of your writing for you and all of your human connection, I think that's where it gets dicey, versus using AI to help you with automations. For instance, when someone fills out a form, you get an email that says so-and-so filled out a form, pulls up their website, pulls up some information for you about them. So maybe you don't have to spend 20 minutes looking into them before you hop on a call with them. Maybe you have AI that gives you that information. You would definitely want to verify that information and make sure what AI is giving you is accurate, because it's, I don't know, been known to happen that AI sometimes gives very incorrect information. So you don't want to hop on a call with a prospect and be like, "Oh, Mike, so I heard that you absolutely love to make wedding dresses. Tell me more about that. We love to work with you. We've heard all about your wedding dress designs. That's amazing." Mike's going to sit there and go, "Why would I want to work with this person?" And it's because you relied on AI to give you that info. "Oh, Mike is a great wedding dress designer." No, he designs signs, but that can happen. So I go back to, again, verify, verify, verify. And, Jesse could speak even more specifically about different options when using AI, but I'm still very much of that belief system that every interaction still needs that human touch and that human oversight.
And I think there's another another way to look at this question. And we see large companies like Meta talking about how they're replacing coders with AI across the board. And that's another thing we need to think about when it comes to using AI ethically. Do we want to start replacing all of our workforce with AI? Do we feel comfortable that AI is at the point where it can replace our entire team? If we lay off our entire team, so we have 3 people running all of the AI, and you previously had a team of 100 people doing all this work, what is the perception of your company going to be when you just laid off 100 people to what? Save yourself on the bottom line? There's going to be room for helping reskill people, helping them learn how to use these tools and find new ways of working. We shouldn't be looking at it as, well, this tool can replace this person. Okay, that tool might be able to do what that person is currently doing, but how can we train that person to do something else? Or maybe that person needs to be involved to run this tool because they're the expert. They're going to know when that tool is doing its job right and when it's not. And they're going to have the knowledge and the skill to be able to correct things when AI runs afoul. So there are so many elements to this type of question. And it's not... Go on.
No, go ahead.
And it's not a really straightforward thing. There's not a clear-cut answer of when does it start to cost you in trust or in conversion or connection. That's going to be one of those questions, well, where it just depends. And we need to be aware that those costs are there. And if we start realizing we're nearing the edge of that line, figure out which side of it do we want to be on.
Yeah. And it looks like, excuse me, for some reason we're not getting comments from each platform. So we actually have a couple comments on LinkedIn from Stephanie Meeks. She said, I'd love to know how much of a reduction in customer contacts are companies seeing with those helper chatbots versus getting more frustrated customers. And it would be so much better if all call centers have the callback option so we don't have to wait on hold. Yes, 100% agree with that. That is a wonderful feature. In fact, we were actually surprised because we had to deal with the IRS this year. And we were just dreading it because it was one of those things where I had to verify my identity. And we called and we're just like, we're going to be on hold all day. And they had this, we'll call you back in a half an hour. We were like, wow, if the IRS can establish that, surely most people can, right? Or businesses.
Exactly. And
I also wonder why more of these companies don't have email support. Because to me, again, I'm just thinking about the hotel folio thing. It would be so much easier to just be able to send an email with, okay, this is the confirmation number, the guest name, the check in and out dates, and just email it rather than wait on hold for all of this time for somebody to have to look it up and send it. I wonder why more people are not using email and text type support, or maybe they are. I know I always look for that option. If I have the option to talk to a chat person, I generally will do that over the phone because I just don't want to have to talk on the phone. But there is definitely something lacking in that kind of service in a lot of places.
there is. And yeah, I think there's so many ways to offer that customer support. And I find it frustrating when I have to pick up a phone and call somebody. I really don't enjoy using the phone. I find a lot of the process frustrating. And let's use one example I can think of. there's a company called Isotope. They make audio software. They were bought out by a larger audio software company. Isotope used to have a really nice chat system where you could go online, have chat support. They were, as long as you caught them during business hours, you could get help really quickly. The new company bought them out, did away with that. Now it's nearly impossible to find any way to contact a human. It's all, you have to fill out this form, and trying to figure out where to find a form to fill out. They don't make it easy for you to contact them for help, and I think some companies do this on purpose. And I can't remember the exact comment that you read off of LinkedIn. What was the first one?
I'd love to know how much of a reduction in customer contacts are companies seeing with those helper chatbots versus getting more frustrated customers.
I think that would be a really good thing for a lot of companies to research. And I think a lot of us could help, because I know a lot of times when we do those types of things, do the chatbots or call, a lot of times they offer to let you take a survey afterwards. I know most of the kind of off-the-shelf chatbots typically include that at the end of the chat, where you can rate the chat and give feedback. So if we're not liking what we're seeing, we should be using those surveys to give feedback, to let the companies know, hey, this isn't working as well as you think it is. This is why. Same thing with the phone calls. If they offer a survey afterwards, as much as I hate using the phone, it's definitely worth hanging on the line for a couple of minutes to give some feedback. But yeah, I think a lot of companies would do well to research that kind of thing.
And that's all very millennial of us. The fear of the phone is especially when you're thinking about when you're thinking about customer experience, you do need to consider generations. Because even though we are all individuals and we're all going to be different within a generation, no, we're not all the same. We're not a bunch of walking stereotypes. That said, we came up in different times, meaning we do have some different views, things that we're used to, things that we're comfortable with. For example, for me, if you call me on the phone, my eyes are going to get big, and I'm going to be like, what happened? What's wrong? What's the emergency? You're calling me? What is going on? You're not texting? You're not emailing? Something's wrong. Whereas if you call my parents, they appreciate that. They get excited when they see your your name come up on their phone. They're like, oh, they're calling me. Yay, I can't wait to pick up. And when they have something to say, they pick up the phone and they call. And you need to understand your customers in that way too. So like if you, again, that comes back to really understanding your audience. If you know that 80% of your audience is millennial and Gen Z, you're going to want to think through, okay, what form of communication is going to work best? Are they going to feel more at home and comfortable with? And chances are, yes, they will feel maybe better, okay, they're used to talking to chatbots and filling out forms and things like that. In fact, last thing they want to do, like Jesse said, is have to actually call somebody. No, if I have to call you, I'm going to take my business elsewhere, because no, I'm not getting on a phone. A lot of them might be thinking that. So again, knowing that and understanding that and making that experience as friction-free as possible is part of, again, going back to why that branding and understanding the foundation of your business and your customers is so important, because you don't want to frustrate your customers. But to tie it back in with the AI question of, when you start losing trust, that's one of those areas, because when you set up automations, you want to understand how to set up automations. What types of automations are going to work really well for your customers, and what aren't going to work really well. So if you have a bunch of customers that need that personalized, the conversation, they like talking on the phone, I don't know that a chatbot is going to work really well for you if you're serving, for instance, a lot of your customers are, 60 and above.
Again, it is really good to know your customer, but also, like for me, I don't like to talk on the phone. And it's not just because I don't like to talk on it. Sometimes there are reasons. Like again, with this Hotel Folio example, I have to tell you my email address. It's really long at that company. It's one of those where it's a first name dot last name at a really long company name. So I have to spell everything out, and it's such a pain. And I always tell them, look, we're going to have to repeat this for all of these people. So put it somewhere where you can copy and paste. It's going to make it easier. But if I had a place where I could just type it and send it, it would be faster. But we kind of expect that with all these big giant companies. But on the local level, where I think an automation would be really helpful is, I think we talked briefly about my experience finding a plumber a couple weeks ago. And out of everybody that I reached out to, because I didn't want to get on the phone, only one of them got back to me. And he's the one that I hired, and he was great, and it was fine. But if I were to have, I think I reached out to 2 other companies because I always like to get 3. Emailed them through their website. I think one was a direct email, one was a contact form on their site. Why have a form or an email address on your site if you're not going to respond to it? I mean, again, I'm trying to give you money, but also that would be a really great time to set up an automation. And even if it said, the best way to reach us is by phone, please call us here. Or even better, like if they have a text line, great. Send me a response and just saying, you can text us at this number. Great. Now I have another option that I still don't have to get on the phone, but I know you're probably not going to pay attention to the email. That's okay. You're giving me an alternate way to reach you. You're telling me that this is the best way to reach you. I am fine with that kind of automation. If I get just an auto responder that says, you can text me at this number. Okay, I'll do that. Or even if it says like, I probably wouldn't say like the only way to reach us is by phone, but it's everything is changing. And I just found this the other day, again, with the production work, but I'm trying to get locations sorted for a bunch of bakeries in a city in California. And many of them don't have phone numbers. So you can find their website and their contact info, but even if you do a Google search for them, that's not how it works. So I'm not sure if that's because it's specific to maybe restaurant industry, but that was the first time, and it was a good chunk of them just didn't have phone numbers. I was like, yeah, but things are changing. so we have to be mindful of, again, who is our customer and how did they communicate? Because if you've got all these Gen Z kids who are coming in and they're not going to get on the phone, you have to give them another way to reach you if you want their business.
And this seems like, again, everything comes back to your brand, knowing your audience, and being able to create things that is going to not push them away. If you're someone who works with people across many generations, or you're a company that serves people across many generations, it's really important that you give them different options, not just phone, not just email, texting, forms, whatever. It does help. And if you're a company that you're just overloaded with work and you're at a point where you're not even going to respond to emails or form submissions, just put something on your website saying, I'm not taking on new clients or new work right now. Because otherwise you're kind of burning bridges with people. Hey, I reached out to this person and they never got back to me. I'm not going to, if somebody asks me, have you worked with any local plumbers? Well, yeah, I worked with this one. They were really great. But I did reach out to these other ones and they didn't even get back to me. So I definitely can't recommend them. Even if the experience with the plumber wasn't great, chances are if you're asked, you're going to tell them about the 2 that didn't even respond. So there's that negative word of mouth element too. And maybe you're not at a place where you can take on new clients right now, but maybe 6 months down the road, a year down the road, I have another plumbing issue and I really liked your website and what you had to say about yourself. I'll reach out again, but only if you'd gotten back to me or I knew you weren't taking clients. If you just never bothered to get back to me, I'm never reaching out to you again.
Yeah, and I'm a very loyal person. So if I find somebody that I like, I will stick with them for, like, I had the same dentist for 20 years, the same person that I get my hair cut, all of these things. If I find somebody, they do a good job one time, they have me for life, and as long as I'm still there and they're still doing that and I still need that thing. And it's I think that goes a long way. And most of the way people hire things is, again, through referrals. I didn't just start cold calling plumbers. I looked through our local groups on Facebook to say, well, because I knew there were a lot of posts about plumber recommendations. I went through to see who was recommended the most, and those were the ones that I reached out to, because even though I don't know my neighbors necessarily, I at least it's getting a recommendation from a group of a bunch of people in the area. So it's a good chance that I would get good service. And now, hopefully I don't need a plumber again for a very long time, but the next time I'm just going to call that guy. I'm not going to reach out to a bunch of people because I already found somebody that offered good service. And I think that's the same with a lot of businesses. Like, yeah, I'm talking about a household repair kind of thing, but it's the same. It could be if I'm hiring a marketing person. If I reached out to you, Tara, and you just didn't acknowledge my existence, okay, I'm not going to beg you to work for me. I'm not going to try to reach out to you again and be like, hey, please, would you please talk to me because I want to hire you?
No,
It's
because you have
just
options.
options. And these days, everyone has options everywhere. So again, focusing on if you're using any kind of automation, if that making your customers' lives easier, then great. If it's making it more difficult, it might not be the right thing to do.
Exactly. And Amanda gave some good information when it comes to when you're thinking, trying to understand your customer. She just walked through her journey, how she looks for a plumber, what her consideration phase looks like. So she talks about the first place she goes isn't just Googling where are plumbers in Vancouver, Washington. She gets more specific than that. She actually goes to groups, and that's what a lot of people do. They want to already start with somebody who's at least somewhat vetted. They don't trust just typing doing a Google search, or even with AI saying, okay, AI, give me a list of vendors plumbers to work with. They would prefer to get it from a trusted family member or friend first and foremost, but maybe they belong to a community or group, and they tend to trust those people more than an advertisement or even like reviews, which we all know sometimes aren't always accurate, or people leave them, or there's fake reviews or things like that. And so I think, again, those are the things you need to know when you are trying to scale your business and you're trying to get more leads or more customers, or even retain the ones that you have, is what is important to them, and how do they find you in the first place?
Yeah, and I mean, another way to use automation or automation and AI, is to use it to research, to find people to reach out to, because it seems counterintuitive, but a lot of people are still finding success with cold outreach. Yes, it's great to be able to have a network of people who can refer you to others. It's good to have that reputation, all of that, but there's going to be times when that just isn't working. You're not getting the referrals when you need them. Or maybe you're in a situation where you're trying to scale and you want to pick up a couple more clients to be able to help you scale to that next level. Now you're going to need a strategy for finding new customers, finding new clients. And that's, again, where strategy comes into play, but AI can help you. If you're running a small sign business, You can do research into your competitors, see what they're doing. You can look into what types of people would be interested in custom metal signs or metalwork. So you can start identifying local companies who might be interested in that, so you can reach out to them. So there's a lot of ways you can use AI behind the scenes that's going to help you save time. It can help you work in ways that you haven't been able to do it before. So there's a lot there, and it really comes down to being able to take a step back and really identifying the problems you have and how you can go about trying to solve them. Because on the live stream we did yesterday, we were talking about a prompt that a podcaster had posted about, here's my prompt for creating all of these different things for my podcast, like title, show notes, all of that stuff. But I'm looking at it and going, okay, you have this transcript. You can do so much more with it than you're currently doing. But that's because this person was looking at it as, this is currently what I do. How can I use AI to do that so I don't have to? But if you take a different approach and start looking at it as, what can I do? What can AI do? Can we do more than I was able to do myself by utilizing AI? And I know this is kind of delving off the topic, but I think it's something that we all need to think about, and especially businesses, is how can AI be used not just to replace things that are currently done, but to allow you to expand what you're currently doing to do things you haven't had the manpower or the time or the expertise to do.
Yeah. Efficiency is a wonderful thing.
It is.
I like efficiency. Even though I'm a creative, I still like the idea of it. But
Efficiency
Amanda
is
and Jesse,
good.
they live it.
Efficiency is my world.
Yes.
I'm very sad when things are not efficient.
As is Jesse.
So does anybody out there have any other questions before we sign off? And while we give them a couple of minutes, do we have any parting thoughts we wanted to cover? Anything we didn't get to talk about?
I think just to repeat that, if you haven't noticed, a lot of what we talk about always ties back to brand. So even when we're talking about operations and we're talking about AI integration and automation, it is all part of who you are and that customer experience. And that's why when we decided to think through our service offerings, we wanted to offer more than just brand services, because it's so much more than the, again, creating the pretty visuals and the messaging and the creative aspect and videos and sharing your story. It's also, that's like doing the talking, right? But what do you do in action? What does the walk actually look like? And that's where operations comes in. That's where the decisions you make with AI and how to use it and how not to use it, again, it always should tie back into what the customer experience is that you want for the people that you love working with and want to help in some way. Everything is about that. And you can have a gorgeous website and logo and on-point messaging, but if your operations is a hot mess and there's a bunch of inefficiencies and people are filling out forms on your website and they're not getting responses because you're just overwhelmed, or maybe you have too many customers and you can't keep up, how do you think that is going to affect the outside perception? Sooner or later, people are going to start leaving because, people, they tend to leave negative reviews before they leave good reviews. So they'll get on and they'll be like, I filled out a form. I was really excited to use their service or product, and I never heard back from them, and they think they're too good for me. well, fine, if you don't want my service, I'm going to go elsewhere. They're too good to talk to me. Or they gave me one price and then I called or I went to buy it and it was $20 more than they quoted me. I don't trust them anymore. These are the things that if you're not organized on the back end, these things happen. These mistakes happen. And unfortunately, sometimes, people aren't super forgiving of mistakes, especially when they feel like their trust has been broken. So I think if you're going to take anything away from this, it's, again, speaking to the importance of not just what you look like as a brand, but what the customer experience actually is and all of the components that go into it.
I'm really sad to learn that my logo won't just make business for me. I really like my new logo. I wanted my logo to run out and find me business, and they were telling me that that's not how it works.
It'll definitely help because you came up with a great concept.
Well, thank you. But yeah, I just think it's, always keeping customers in mind, or your clients, because those are the ones who are hiring you. They're the ones who are paying you. Again, the way I built my entire business is on referrals and reputation. And a lot of that is because I communicate. And I generally communicate in my own way, but I don't let emails sit unread for days. You have to have that you want every client to feel like they're your only client, or that they're your priority. And I've had people say that before. It's like, I don't know how you have all these clients, but you always make time for me. I always feel like I'm getting what I need. And that's it. That's the strategy is, and it doesn't mean that I don't have boundaries, because I very much prioritize my downtime also. I'm not one of those people that checks email at night and on weekends unless I'm in the middle of an important project that needs that. But it's really thinking about that, I feel like it's just being repetitive, but it's so important. What is your customer experience working with you? It should be a very big focus. And if your operations, you're making changes to that, if you're implementing AI and other automations, are you doing that while still making sure that your customer is getting the same quality or even better service than what they expect? Because if you start making changes and it negatively affects them, that loyalty that you've built up is slowly going to go away, because people give you a break when they've been working with you for a long time. But think about your first time clients. They're not going to come back if they don't have a good experience. And you can only keep loyal clients around for so long if you start treating them what they consider to be in a negative way.
I agree. I don't think I can top anything you two just said. So we'll bring up a last comment and we'll sign off. Very informative as always. You always get my mind working in directions I've never considered as the older generation. That's what we're here for, is to try to help people think about things differently. Because when we work in a silo, when we do things ourselves, we get very stuck in how we see things. And I always have bought into the idea of surrounding yourself with people who are good in other things, because they bring different viewpoints than you would have yourself.
Agreed. I think diversity is a wonderful thing in terms of points of view and getting new ideas and being able to bust out of your own box. And I'm big on thinking out of the box and taking risks, because I think that's how you create some really powerful stories and powerful moments for people.
Agreed. Thank you, everybody, for watching and participating. Hopefully the rest of you found this as informative as Mike has, and we'll see you next time. Bye.